Welcome to another episode of Horror Movie Night. It is 1992. We haven't left the 90s, and I don't think we're leaving the 90s anytime soon. And we're talking about a movie that was very confusing for me to watch, knowing it was a Scott pick, because all things considered, the first 90% of this movie is basically just like a cop procedural.
I didn't pick it for that, though.
But that just goes off the fucking rails in the last like 10 minutes of it. I am so ready to talk about this. The box art to this movie looks like it's a werewolf film, I want to say.
Yeah.
And I spent most of the movie thinking, yeah, this is a werewolf movie. He's hunting a werewolf. And boy, was I wrong. Scott, how did you even hear about this movie? And what led to you picking it?
So I don't remember how I came across this film. I probably saw the box at the video store, one of the video stores that I grew up going to. Never watched it. And then I think that this came up maybe 5 or 10 at the most years ago as a suggestion on YouTube, and I watched it and I was like, man, this shit's boring. When's the monster gonna show up? Because that monster looks sick. It looks like
I spent a lot of this movie asking, when's the monster gonna get here?
Yeah. I was all about the waiting for the monster to show up, and I just figured that it would be. I mentioned it in the group at some point relatively recently, like within the last 6 months or something like that. But it's like a buddy cop procedural horror movie that can't decide what it wants to be. So I don't know, guys. Like, I'm not upset about picking it, but I don't have answers for you.
That's fine. No, I think that's the best type of movie. Scorpio, stand up! Where are my Scorpios at? Where are you? Were you gonna kill some people? What are we doing?
So I read a bunch of hosts and IMDb trivia and all sorts of stuff about, because I was trying to get to I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole trying to get to the root of how the concept of this movie started, and it doesn't seem like anybody really has the answer. I mean, that I could find it. I know that it was a really hard production, and so the actual cinematographer, was the director, bailed for the last section of the movie. This monster, which I really wish that the monster was in the movie more. I wish that this movie was a lot more like The Relic.
Okay.
Sure.
Which is on my long list. It's not a good movie, and no one knows it's a bad movie.
Sure. Yeah.
No one that was working the movie knows it's a bad movie. There's it's a lot more like, there's a monster. And this movie, they keep talking about how it's a serial killer, and I'm like, they give you the fucking monster on the art.
Right.
So why are they trying to make it be a surprise?
It's did you read about the original script for this?
Maybe,
Pentagon.
But please. Oh, Pentagon? Pentagram. Yes, that it was originally going to be called Pentagram, and it was a supernatural killer, and it was.
And then the first Power came out.
Yes, and they were like, it's too much like the first Power, and I mean, I feel like it's not much of a stretch from the original concept.
No, I think I almost think that they kept the first 80 pages
hour of
written.
The movie is really.
Oh my god! Yeah. That doesn't sound like a different script at all.
How does that monster, how does Scorpio the monster, with its, chitin human-killing nails that are about 4 inches long, write on mirrors and walls and blood, and how does what is it? Is it a demon? Is it an alien? Is it...
So I'll tell you that according...
I thought it was going to be a rat.
I was going to say,
hybrid.
According to Wikipedia, it's a mutated rat. I see zero rat features anywhere in it, because you have to keep in mind that the whole point of this movie is that it is like hey, global warming's getting crazy and it's fucking with nature. Mm-hmm. So it's supposed to be like,
baby.
Yeah, it's supposed to be this mutated sewer rat, because then it's implied that there's more of them in the very end of the movie, where you see
with the bubbles?
There's some with the bubbles.
I really didn't catch that, I ironically did not read the synopsis of the Wikipedia page.
Oh, I needed to know because it felt like this was one of those movies
I felt like I knew everything. I didn't feel like I missed a beat.
This is one of those movies where it's so strange, and it's both so slow, but then things will happen so at random that I would be like, am I missing something? Like I feel like something had to have happened by now. And then I would like check the wiki paragraph and be like, nope, this is where I'm at. I remember all of these scenes that it's describing. So
yeah, right, yeah, you didn't miss anything. Any explanation for for silver nipples in the strip club? Any explanation for why?
You mean like the weird S&M leather strip club?
Yeah, and her
That's
nipples were completely painted silver. It's future. All right.
Are you sure those were just pasties? I don't know.
No, they were painted silver. They were like silver Sharpie.
I wasn't paying attention because I was like,
well, you missed nipples.
I'm
sorry.
You know, I don't like I'm gonna yuck some yums. Sorry, I don't like leather stuff. I don't like the vibe. You know, like that girl in the background of your picture. With that face mask, it doesn't do it for me. Everybody, like the gimp masks.
It doesn't do it for Rutger Hauer either. He rips it off, goes just like, why is he so pissed that she had lips?
Here's something wild: was when Rutger Hauer is first walking through this like.
Who is unhinged the entire movie?
Completely. Who apparently the writer originally wanted Harrison Ford for this role, and then was like, Rutger Hauer's perfect. Like he was like, that's perfect. But when he was walking through the hallway, there was a split second where I was like,
a split second.
I was like, this motherfucker looks like Giles from Buffy. And then I was like, man, this movie would be so much better if it was Anthony Stewart.
Holy fuck. They wouldn't even have to have the buddy cop. It could just be Giles because he's already British. And we've seen him play a bad guy in Genetic Opera, Repo the Genetic Opera, and Ted Lasso. So, you know, he could play good cop, bad cop all at once. Man, that would be great. Anthony Stewart head. That would be fantastic.
Yeah. So I had written so very rarely do I talk about anything technical in this movie. But there is one thing that I absolutely had to mention from a technical standpoint. And I'm hoping that Kyle caught this. I'm hoping Scott caught this. There is a scene where they are in the police office, and I was like, someone did not white balance these cameras because everybody's face is so washed out by the lights inside this office that I'm like, is this a style choice? And then I'm like, nope.
Something
it was like somebody was out sick and they just had like the second shooters there for the day. And
the hard shoot that they described was trying to light that scene.
I love that the secondary cast, pretty much everybody that works at that police station was in Braveheart, just like 2 years later, because you got Pete Postlethwaite, who I'm pretty sure was in Braveheart. I know for a fact that the guy who's the lieutenant, who has the most amazing freak out later on, which I will get to, he plays one of the Scottish or the Irish lords in Braveheart. I mean, sadly, Rutger Hauer was not in Braveheart. Can you imagine?
Could you fucking imagine?
Wait,
dude.
Was Michael Pollard in there as well? Because I always get excited when he pops up in some shit.
Dude, I love when he pops up.
I'll have to rewatch Braveheart if I forgot that he was in there.
I'm gonna say he was in it, but you're gonna have to watch the whole movie and check.
Dude, less than half of this cast was British. Like there was
such a weird mix. That, everybody that works at the
takes place in London, but like the leads have come over from America for
and Kim Cattrall's a weird fit for this too.
But the Kim Cattrall of it all too is like
I want to use that phrase forever. The Kim Cattrall of it all.
There's no one in this movie that I would say is like a big name, but they all seem bigger than this movie deserves, if that makes sense.
Yeah, they're not Harrison Ford, but they're definitely like
this doesn't feel like this movie feels like it's a film. I'm going to throw this out as this was going to be one of my 2 double feature options. I'm just going to mention it now. It makes more sense. So first of all, when I hit play on this movie, there was a split second that I thought the wrong movie was starting. I'm going to keep saying split second. I'm sorry. There was a split second.
Hey, listeners, do you know what we're talking about this week?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wait, hold on. Should this be a drinking game now?
What was that sound?
Purgatory. It's a coffee stout because he drinks so much coffee.
I was like, I have my mug, and I was just going to be like, where's my goddamn coffee?
Yeah. Right. There's lots of sugar.
So when water, though.
when I hit play on this movie and we get that little like in 2008 the global warming crisis like pushed things to an unfixable point or whatever, like that whole thing's rolling, and until the title card came up I was like, have we already watched this movie? And I realized I was mistaking it for Shocking Dark. and like Shocking Dark is like, but like Shocking Dark,
wow.
It's like that movie, you look at that cast and you're like, yeah. Of course, like not a hyperlink to be found for the most part. But like this, it's like, God, almost every person that's in this movie has done shit. Like,
star-studded, dude.
Yeah.
Truly. Very studded. There was one, I haven't watched enough like cops with vendetta movies really in my life, like Shocking. Going back on the force to ish, right? You know how much I love police, how much I love police movies.
Your ACAB is all cops are buddies.
Yeah. There's one moment where Rutger Hauer loses his shit and is in the middle of outside somewhere, in the middle of a lot of people, and just fires his gun full round up in the air, and then gets swarmed by other people with guns in public. And then his partner is like, no, he's fine. He's a police officer. As if like we needed to, like, this dude's literally losing his shit, firing a gun up in the air. And everybody's like, oh, you're right. It's okay that he does this because he's a police officer, which means that he's totally safe and that he's not going to hurt anybody. And then it's like, I'm like, like everybody back away with their guns now drawn at
Hey,
this
Kyle,
guy.
Stop watching this through your 2023 eyes when this is a 2008 movie and we all know that there was absolutely no problem with the police back then.
That's right. You know what? You're right. Actually, and in 1992, especially as far away from Los Angeles as we can be, there was no problems with police at all.
There was no major news reports of anything of any kind happening with the police at that point.
Police. Everybody's fine.
Well, that's the thing. That was the thing that kept me, like, I made a reference to this last week, that I literally was watching like some random Steven Seagal bullshit the other day and like sent you guys like a 15-second video clip from it. But this movie feels more like a Steven Seagal movie for the first hour than anything else we've ever talked about.
It does.
On
it feels like
a
movie my grandfather would watch on TNT. Or USA or whatever
right after,
the fuck.
Yeah, or Evan's grandmother would watch after Death Wish 3
or something. Nana B's getting another shout out. He's gonna love that.
So it's so funny because my notes are like 3 or 4 things in the first like 5 minutes, long gap, and then like 8 notes for the last like 10 minutes of this movie.
Because you're living for the end of this movie.
Yeah. Oh my God. And it's a pay, dude. Does it pay itself off? Before we talk about the creature, though, I do want to read 2 reviews that are so mean that I had to copy them down.
I thought that we weren't allowed to be negative on this show, Matt.
One is from Variety. Variety, when this movie came out, wrote, "Split Second is an extremely stupid monster movie."
I agree.
And then the Los Angeles Times wrote, "It's hard to think of a less satisfactory creature feature in recent memory than the simply terrible Split Second." And I was just like, man, the critics were, the fact that this was, again, to say like this is got more of a backing than it deserves, like Variety and the Los Angeles Times in 1992 weren't reviewing some like straight to video bullshit, which means that this was like sent to critics.
Yeah, but do you want to know something crazy? Which I'm sure you wrote down.
Was it profitable?
No, it underperformed at the box office, and you want to know why? It came out the weekend of the LA riots.
Oh, Jesus.
Like,
that's what I'm talking about, man.
Yeah, you mentioned that, and I was like, wait, did I write something down about the riots?
That's so funny. I didn't. Oh my God. All of this tracks. This movie hits on a lot of levels. For me, I gave it 4 stars on Letterboxd. I loved this movie. I loved Kim Cattrall getting hit by a pigeon. That was maybe my favorite.
on Rutger Hauer's head when he wakes up.
My God, like there was so many little things and details that I was like, okay, so they did think about this movie. Like they,
and the rat catching and the plague pit posters in the background, like the actual sets are fantastic.
Yeah, I loved his partner turning into a version of himself because he's like seen too much now, and like I was just like, I was like, this is fun. It did not deliver on the monster. Though. I would absolutely agree because I was like, I didn't know there was a monster. I thought it was just a serial killer. I went in totally blind.
If it's a rat, if it's a mutated rat, how can it read and write?
Look, there's a lot of questions.
It's a demon.
Great point.
So Kyle, you and I were on the phone briefly today, and you set a challenge for me, and I don't think I succeeded. But you said, I'm curious if we both think the creature looks like the same thing. So I wrote down that I think that the creature looks like a bizarre mixture of the deadly spawn monster mixed with the little girl's costume from Space Invaders.
We weren't gelling on this. I thought it was the baddie from Power Rangers the movie, whatever the big the guy with the
Ivan Ooze?
fucking...
No, one of the kaiju.
No.
Oh, the guy with the skin.
He's
no
red.
Skin.
He's like
red.
more
He's
red.
got like the shredder.
Oh, yes. Oh my God, he does. Hold on a second. I do need to...
I don't know his name, and I didn't do my due diligence to look that one up.
Wow. Pretty disappointed.
This will...
I kind of thought that Matt would just answer it for me.
No,
he is our
apologize.
resident Power Rangers guy. So here's the thing about it while Matt's getting that character name. This is the most Image Comics 1992 monster design ever. Like, it looks exactly like everybody that Jim Lee would have been doing in early Image Comics.
For the Patreon and for you two, I just for because I know that I'm the only one that's watched Space Invaders in the last like couple years. This is the little girl's costume in Space Invaders.
There is a literal shot that looks like that.
I
mean, that was 1990. They had to have had that costume lying around when they were shooting.
They had to cut corners after they paid
inserts.
for Rutger Hauer, Kim Cattrall, and Michael Pollard to be in this.
Yeah.
Dude, and
we
then
don't really see the whole monster.
No, it's always in bits and pieces.
No, you see the whole monster a couple times at the end.
He jumps from. He does jump from the car, and
oh my God, the part when it's running after Kim Cattrall and the hand. It is so fucking dumb. That right after that, I wrote in.
It's so stiff.
It's like how is its wrist so powerful that it can like break sheet metal? It should be the claws. But it was like they probably originally tested that scene with the claws, and they're like, we can't tell that it's a hand. It just looks like a couple claws. And they're like, well, put the whole fucking arm up, you know?
It's like at that point, it's just like, why not? Like, why the fuck not? You know, nobody's gonna think it's a rat. Nobody's gonna think like that guy.
That's him, whatever.
Motherfucker.
Lord Zed.
Zed.
But yes, no. So the other things that I wrote down about this monster was that the noises that it makes. It never forms words, but the entire time I was waiting for it to just be like, West, because it sounds just like the decapitated head in Reanimator whenever he's near the creature, like the weird like it's struggling to breathe.
Listen, it's just because you're a mutant killing machine doesn't mean that you don't have asthma. Maybe you're out in the cold sewers
elements.
with the water everywhere, and you just
London gets cold.
Dude.
Yeah,
and then
London
Rutger
fog.
Howard,
Poor guy needs a raincoat.
He needs a London fog. Yeah.
And then Rutger Hauer, to kill the monster, punches its heart out.
Yeah. How is Rutger Hauer a superhero himself? That's what I'm saying. Is it's definitely a demon, and Rutger Hauer is possessed by the Holy Spirit, by the angel Gabriel or some shit, and then he is able to take out. Also, a
lot of coffee.
He's just hyped up on caffeine and meth. She's like Kim Cattrall, who also that's his dead partner's ex-wife that he stole, which is weird. It shouldn't. I don't like that concept, but that's just me.
That's bad karma.
Yeah. Like they both deserved a lot worse than they got in this. But yeah, so it was when he pulls out Scorpio's heart, and we can't dismiss the fact that Scorpio is obsessed with the occult. So that, plus the fact that it looks crazy and it doesn't look anything like a rat, and 3, that when he's holding its heart and it's dying for real, there's custard coming out of the heart valves.
Phantasm mustard custard.
Yes, very Dead Alive and Phantasm mustard custard. And you can hear the souls of the damned who are crying out. So it is absolutely a demon.
No, sorry. I checked the wiki. It says they discover the truth. The killer is not human. It is a large, horrific, and potentially demonic creature.
Well, I'm telling you that I have cracked the code. The case is solved. This cold case can be closed for good because it is a demon.
And then to answer this question, it says, during the fight, Durkin wounds the creature's chest enough to allow Stone to pull the monster's heart out of its ribcage.
Thank you, Durkin, for doing the heavy lifting on this one. So
Durkin, I don't even know him.
My favorite, speaking of hearts, I do want to just point this one out real quick, because there was a heart in Rutger Hauer's refrigerator. Like, there was a scene where he opens up, but there's not, the heart's on a plate in the fridge. But the fridge, all the inside of the fridge is covered in blood.
Yeah.
So it's almost as like they put the heart in, shook it all around to cover the inside of this refrigerator with blood, placed it back on the plate, and shut the door of the fridge. It's like, it's just, I know visually it's important.
Artiste, all right?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
It was
so
still
much blood
beating, Kyle. Come on, it was pulsating. They quickly put it on the plate, shut the door, and just let it do its job.
No, what I want to think is that Scorpio
have you not seen Temple of Doom?
Scorpio ripped it out of whoever's chest and then sucked on the wound and then like spat the blood into everywhere.
Yeah.
And then it stepped back, it took a look, and it was like, it gave a thumbs up with its 3-inch nails, and then it walked out and it bit Kim Cattrall on the neck.
On the way out, took a bite. Took a quick bite on the way out. Loved the Knights of White Satin. Both the regular Knights in White Satin and then some beautiful instrumental during a very tender, loving piece.
There's some, again, there
choices.
Was a budget behind this. There's a witchcraft cover to end this movie. Like, they paid money for song rights. All right, well,
the last thing I have to do is my impression of the police chief, because I wrote it down phonetically, so I'm going to try and say it the way he said it, but I may not do as well. But listeners, forgive
this is a
me.
safe space.
No, it is absolutely not a safe space.
Really not.
No, after Streets of Fire, I know that this is not a safe space for me.
All the Split Second fans are going to come after me for this impression.
The Brits are going to be like, oi! So anyway, he goes, what am I supposed to... fuck, I already fucked it up. What am I supposed to do? Put out an APB for some fucking guy who looks like the devil, answers to the name of Lucifer. And then he yells at some poor woman who walks by. He's like, yeah, you. That's... It's wild. But the thing... Also, I forgot right before that, Rutger Hauer leaves Kim Cattrall to sleep in his shithole apartment that is...
terrible.
Just like it is.
She should have
It is tetanus, 4 feet by 4 feet of tetanus. So he leaves her, and then I realize that the future is so fucked up because he like licks these chocolates and then sticks them on his nasty fridge in the shape of a heart, and they melt there a little bit. And she gets up and she sees it. She takes one off and she shrugs her shoulders and eats it.
Yep.
Nasty as fuck.
That's love.
Num
Scott,
num.
you don't know what they've been through.
I sure don't, and I don't. No. I don't think that it's going to stop her from getting, food poisoning.
No, it's bad.
That's the risk you take for love.
At Maximum Mediocrity, people say things like,
I don't dress like this on the regular basis. This isn't my, pooping uniform. This is not.
And they also say things like,
The nurses are usually either angels of mercy or whores.
Every episode is a new experience where you get to know people that aren't famous but should be.
Why am I facing Floyd Mayweather in the woods?
My co-host Morgan and I track down the people you didn't know you needed to hear from.
It's like hot sex in a mug.
We are the Maximum Mediocrity Podcast, and we are on all major podcasting platforms. We'll be waiting for you.
Scott, you picked this. What would you make your double feature with this bad boy?
So I I originally thought for one, and then I was like, oh no, there's another one. And then there's a third thing that I don't know if it really exists. So I have a couple that I need to talk through, but I'm going to give you one. And then when you guys are done, I'll give you my second. And then I'm going to ask you guys if you know what I'm talking about for the third thing that may exist or not. So the first thing that came to mind is Buffy the Vampire Slayer, because we have Rutger Hauer in it. I think it was actually the next year, right? 1992, 93, or were they both 92?
I think it's the same year. I think they were both 92.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you can tell by his physique that they were close. And I just absolutely love Rutger Hauer. He is one of those dead actors that I feel like it would have been super fun to meet at a con.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
and you don't know. He could have loved it, or he could have been the grumpiest man possible.
He could have been a Savini.
Yeah. Right. All right. How about you, Kyle?
I went with Time Cop. I think there's like this sort of like, I mean, it just makes a lot of sense to me. I went with Time Cop.
All right, guys, I know that literally just an episode or so ago, I said, I'm really trying hard not to pick the same like 5 movies that I always pick.
Space Invaders?
But you got a disgruntled cop trying to get revenge on his dead partner. He's hanging out in a fucking sewer. Of course I'm picking Alligator to go with this movie.
Yeah. Too bad that his new partner doesn't have world-class boobs.
Well, hold on a second. Here's the other thing that made me go, oh, I have to pick Alligator. Do you remember what his dead partner's name is?
Is it Dick Durkin? Is it Dick? Is it Durkin?
No.
Oh, okay.
His dead partner was Foster. Who's the star of Alligator? Robert Foster. It just all makes sense to me. But I also want to give a shout out to Amazon Prime. That was really on the top of their game with their "You Might Like This Next" selection, which was Chud.
Yeah. I was hoping I didn't know if the algorithm was going to be the same suggestion or what.
But I was like,
Chud.
yep, that is the exact right answer. Amazon Prime.
Yeah. If right next to it, Death Machine would have come up, that would also came to mind. That was my second one that I was like, Death Machine. It's basically the same fucking movie, except one's a robot and one's a demon. But so here's what I need you guys to help me with.
Yep.
Does this exist? So quick backstory. Every Thanksgiving growing up, my mom and dad would put my sister and I in the car, and we would drive down to North Carolina to have Thanksgiving with my dad's dad side of the family. It was Thanksgiving weekend of 94 or 5 or 6. I really got it down at 3 years. I don't know if it was a movie or a TV episode, and I only caught like 5 minutes of it, but it was some sort of thing where there was this, in Screamers, there are those, they're robots or...
Yeah, they're like the little balls, yeah.
Yeah, but they have like a tail, and they look kind of like a...
Do they look like a phantasm ball with...
So, Screamers, they kind of look like a manta, almost.
Okay.
Like they are kind of round, but then they have like wingy type things that taper down into a tail, and then they're segmented, kind of almost like a pangolin. I don't know if it was a monster or a robot. I think it was some sort of robot creature thingy or thingies that were, you would see from their perspective, and they were in like some sort of park, like Central Park or something, and they were like attacking people's chests and like shooting through their chests and like killing them somehow, maybe taking their hearts. And I think that there was like a cop that was somehow trying to solve the case. That's why it could have been some sort of TV show, and that's why it hasn't come up, because I've looked for a long time. This and like one other movie that I have never been able to find, my childhood, cable memories.
Were they using a weapon to go through chests, or was it sort of their own?
I think it was them. I think that there were these little creatures, or a robot or some sort of creature that was like shooting through people's chests, and then there was this hole in the people's chests when the cop would find them, and he was like, I'm gonna get this motherfucker that's punching holes in people's chests.
Was the hole? Do you remember seeing the hole in the chest?
No, I think that it was either a TV editor or it was a TV
Or, okay.
thing.
A TV thing. Okay.
All right. Well, I don't know.
Listeners, please
I don't
help
think
me.
Kyle. I was going to say, listen, you can contact us on our Facebook group. You can hit up the
Yeah.
Instagram. You can email us at hmnpodcast@gmail.com.
I love shit like this, but I have no. I have
not
no
even
idea.
that's
I'm
not even.
excited.
a
I'm
remote clue.
excited. I'm excited to get for you to get an answer.
I'm not expecting
However
one.
it
I
is.
truly am not.
No, but
I don't
when
think it's
but
gonna
there's
happen.
but
You know,
the
our-
glorious
we've
moment
got
where
a-
you might.
Yeah, we've got a great listener base that
I'm
has
gonna
some
can we
obscure
take
ass
a bet?
shit.
Can we take bets on listeners? I think Damon's gonna get it. I think Damon has this in the bag.
He is a veritable wealth
Yeah.
of just the most obscure
call.
knowledge.
That's a good call. All right, what do you want to talk about that you've maybe witnessed, seen, read, etc.?
I have been reading like a fiend for the last month.
Nice.
I was reading on Kindle. Megan started reading Sarah J. Maas, Maas, series A Court of Thorns and Roses, which is incorrectly, jokingly referred to in social media as fairy porn, like, fantasy porn, romantasy, as I like to call it. The first book, which is called The Court of Thorns and Roses, kind of leans more heavily into that concept of like a Beauty and the Beast, but more high fantasy, less fairy tale type story. And then so far there are 5 books. I've read 3. Megan's read all 5 of the current books, but I read the first one and I was like, this is fun. I read it pretty fast. The second book, I was like, I love this. It was a Court of Mist and Fury. The third one is like a war book. And so there's very little like sex. Oh, but by the way, the sex scenes are fucking hot. But it's really it's the romance of like between some of the main characters that is why people consider it a romance series. It's not like flowery. It's not. I don't know exactly. It's like really good. It's like healthy relationship type discussions. But there's also like monsters and fairies and magic and battles and murder and gore. I mean, they're like 700-page books, and so I like smashed 2,000 pages in the last month, which is just wild for someone who in the last 5 years of his life has mostly stuck with short form
Stories. Yeah,
stories.
no, that's awesome.
So
All right.
really, really good. Highly recommend.
Kyle, how about you?
I watched it wasn't per Brian's recommendation.
Sure.
But it was per a reference that Brian made, and then Vinegar Syndrome put out this film, this box set. It's a beautiful box set. For Thriller, A Cruel Picture. Also, the edit is called, they call her One Eye. Anyway, but the edit, the international edit of it is they call her One Eye, if I remember correctly, and it's 90 minutes. I watched the not edited version, which included actual hardcore pornographic scenes included in this exploitation film that is super like prominent. Like I've always been familiar with the poster art or the idea, not even the idea. I didn't even know the synopsis, but I just knew that Thriller or They Call Her One Eye was a popular exploitation film, right? And so when this 4K got released, super popular. Last year I was a Vinegar Syndrome subscriber, so I got the box set, and me being some sort of like cult movie person for a portion of my career, I felt like I was like, I guess I need to watch this now. We used clips of it in the documentary we did. I don't know, dude. It didn't fucking do it. Nothing. I don't know.
I've never seen that poster. I just looked it up and
I was doing the exact same. I'm like, I do not know what he's talking about. I'm
Really?
like, when did Brian bring this up?
It's been
so
a while.
back
it might
in
have been actually
September.
in our.
It was
was it in our
September.
chat or was he on the?
It was
show?
in our. It was in our chat. It wasn't on the
Okay.
show. It was in our chat. So it was it was aside from the show, but he did bring it up in our chat, and no, it's in a list of like exploitation pictures, like particularly like. I mean, it sort of is rape revenge. You know, this woman gets.
Well, I saw the tagline. They took her voice, they took her site, and she'll take everything that she can back, or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, this quick synopsis is that as a child, she was sexually assaulted, and she then turned mute, and then as she turns into a teenager or a young adult, she gets abducted by this rich man who then gets her addicted to heroin and employs her as a sex worker, as a slave, as a sex slave, really. He writes letters to her parents and ends up killing her parents because her parents think that she doesn't love her anymore, like, you know, and then she ends up enacting revenge upon the people that have abused and used her. I don't know, dude. I don't know why I brought it up here. It's just what I watched.
Because we asked you a blank question and you answered.
Yeah, I mean, I watched other stuff. I watched Bride Wars from 2009 recently. That was fun too. But just as far as the show goes, I don't know. I have a problem with rape revenge films or revenge per sexual assault films that I need to investigate a little bit more, and I'm glad that I watched it. I'm not super stoked that I have it in my collection, and I think I'll make a buck if I try to sell it back on eBay. So that's what
hey, creature features
enjoyed.
around the corner. You could make a couple bucks.
Right,
all right,
right.
So I'm gonna go from Kyle's horrific choice
really downer
to something that I've been telling Kyle he needs to watch ASAP, and I think I may have mentioned this either on a Patreon episode or off the air very briefly, but I finished watching both seasons of Gravity Falls, which my friend Lauren had recommended to me. And, you know, at the end of every year, I do like a whole bunch of top 10 lists, and it's one of them is like TV shows, old TV shows that I watched for the first time this year. And I know it's early to say in late January, but I really am hard-pressed to imagine that a show will actually top Gravity Falls. It's just... I told Kyle, like, this is the cartoon you would make if you decided to make a kid's cartoon. Mm-hmm. But what's so awesome about it to me is, like, the whole first season, it's 2 20-episode seasons. The first season is a total, like, Monster of the Week series. And then at the very end of the last episode, they introduce a character who then kind of becomes the big bad for the second season. And the second season becomes hyper serialized, like to the point that like every episode is a cliffhanger into the next episode. How Disney could even air this syndication wise is like real strange to think about. But what's so cool is that like as you watch this like literally 15-part final episode, like broken into these 20-minute individual episodes, every single what you thought was a throwaway monster of the week in the first season comes back in a big way as like all part of this like overall story. Like it's just so well crafted. And like I remember reading an interview with the creator of it where he's like, everyone thinks the show was canceled. I knew what I wanted to say. I knew I could say it in 2 seasons. Like this is the story. This wasn't us rushing the story. This wasn't like, this is the pace that we set for ourselves. You do a little bit of digging, you're just like, oh man, this is like one of those shows that just has a really rabid fan base, and like I get it. Like this is definitely one of those things where if I'm at a convention, I see someone cosplaying as a Gravity Falls character, I would get excited and be like, yo, we got to talk about this. So like it was so nice to have something. I'm actually missing it because now it's like there was this cool wholesome thing that I was like, when I was done doing podcast work, I'd sit down and knock out 2 or 3 episodes. And now it's like, well, shit, like there's just like this empty space where I don't say this often, but I'm like, I don't know, maybe I could just start it over again. Like,
and that's
like
soon.
Yeah, like that. Yeah. So that's I loved it so much, especially if you're listening and you have a kid. It is heavy existential shit that they cover throughout the entire like the
Rugrats was like that too.
Yeah, no, I mean, Kyle, I cannot wait for you to start watching it because I think you'll be like texting me, maybe not during the first season, but like second season, you're just going to be like, what the this was a kid's show. Like the stuff that they're tackling about like fate and just there are moments. I'll say this, which is not a spoiler in any way, even though it's from the last episode. There are moments that I legitimately tear up and cry because the whole framework of the show is that the 2 main characters are just visiting this town for the summer. So everything is within that one summer, and they build up all these great relationships.
Everything's so temporary.
Yeah. So the final episode, after everything is resolved, they have to say goodbye to all of these characters. And like the one character, as they're saying goodbye, just says, "I never had friends before. Thank you for being my people." And I was like, that line just like hit me in such a powerful way, because I think about, like, for me, I look at it through the lens of like the kid who had so much trouble making friends in elementary school that the guidance counselor held him back a year because they're like, oh, maybe he'll do better. And then I look at like what I have and like what I've built from like sitting in front of a microphone and like talking about my feelings and sharing an interest. And like, I think that that's something that shouldn't be forgotten. And I think that that show captures that magic of like meeting those people that you can just be fucking weird around and like they're not going to judge you and want to walk away, aka the horror movie night story.
Ain't that the truth?
But yeah, so Gravity Falls, it's great. If you've got kids, watch it. Even if you don't have kids, you should still watch it. You can knock it out over like a couple weeks, just knocking out a couple episodes a night. You'll laugh, you'll cry, you'll literally want to start it over again. And I don't know, we're getting sentimental, so I guess this is a good time as any to just always remind you guys that as much as we love entertaining you, we also love to be here for you. So if you're ever going through anything, you ever feel alone, you've got a friend over at the Horror Movie Night podcast. And, we won't always make you watch something like Split Second. Well, sometimes we'll put on good movies.
We did that like 3 weeks ago at this point.
Yeah,
we gave them the red meat. Now they're back
see
to the
see you in June with another good one. I don't know.
All right, well, that was Split Second from 1992, and we'll be back next week with more Horror Movie Night.
You're listening to the Geekscape Network.